Hi, welcome to Awkwardly Awesome. My name is Regan, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit about, I guess it'd be a little story about my past. Before I start, I'd just like to ask that if you enjoy my videos or you like what I have to say, please like, share, subscribe, click the notification bell, do all the things that help promote or improve my algorithm with YouTube. I'd like to share my stories and my message with more people, and I don't really feel like getting back on Facebook to do it. This one here is just, I wrote up a couple pages of notes. It might be quicker, but I usually ramble on long enough that I fill up the 34 minutes that I have of recording time that my phone does. This one's called I Used to Fight a Lot. It's true stories and some, personal observations. So after my marriage fell apart, I was just about 26 years old. I was very angry and I got into a lot of fights. Things hadn't worked out in my world the way that I thought they were supposed to, and I ended up just taking my anger out on the world. As a small justification, I almost always let somebody hit me first before I beat them up. But at the same time, this video is not an excuse for my behavior. What I did was wrong, and it was an angry reaction, and I certainly didn't help spread any goodness or light into the world amongst the population at large. Often I would tell myself that I was sticking up for somebody else or whatever. I justified my behavior a lot. It wasn't healthy, and it wasn't kind. It was just as soon as you say just, you're justifying. It was a reaction of anger, and it was unhealthy. A lot of the times my fights would start because people would interrupt me or misunderstand the points that I was trying to make. My method of discourse is very often to express. You guys probably don't even see this that much because I have limited time on here, but if I'm just going to sit down and talk with you and I want to discuss a subject, I'm going to discuss the far left example, the far right example, and then I'm going to try and take those two and blend them together and run them down the center in more of a balanced, centralized method or more centralized idea. Trying to take the strengths from both sides and create a harmonious balance or a good compromise that's going to leave both sides pissed off at me and thinking I'm an idiot. Because that's generally what happens. If you're talking to somebody who's very far right and you propose something a little bit left, they call you a commie. If you talk to somebody who's very far left and you propose something that's a little bit right, they call you a Nazi. And that's one of the big weaknesses that I see in political discourse these days, is everybody's so entrenched on their side that they're unwilling to negotiate with the other side. They're unwilling to compromise, and they're unwilling to say, okay, we can't get everything that the left wants done, so fuck the right. And the right's like, well, the left is getting in the way of everything we want to do, so fuck them on everything that they do. But the truth is, there's a lot of good things from both sides that they should be cooperating on. But if you do that, then the far right people think, if you cooperate with the left, the far right people think that you're a sellout, and vice versa. The far left people say that you're giving up on your principles. So personally, I like to run it straight down the middle. Astrologically, I'm a lunar Libra. The moon was in Libra at the point of my birth, and those types of people, we love to talk. We love to argue points, just for the sake of discussion. And we like balance. We like to find a central, balanced position. Which, you know, if there's not a whole lot of other people out there that are doing that, it just leaves you kind of alienated in the middle with both people pointing their fingers at you. Um, this long, drawn out method isn't very effective for barroom discussions. People don't have a lot of patience for it when they're there to unwind at the end of the day. People who hang out in bars generally don't tend to be your most intellectual people who are interested in uh, theoretical discussions. They generally, you know, want A plus B equals C type of, or 1 plus 1 equals 2, if we're going to get away from algebra. See, I already went too complicated. Most people want a simple solution when they're sitting there having a beer. They don't want to talk about complex problems. I probably would have done well speaking with like the Fathers of Confederation or the founders of the United States, the writers of the Declaration of Independence, because those guys seem to like to get together in a bar, get drunk, and talk about, you know, high-minded things and, you know, political subjects and political objectives that at the time were impossible. They were completely theoretical. So I probably would have got along with those guys, but, you know, getting along with your average Joe isn't something that I guess that I do very well. At a party, you know, people tend to find me entertaining, but in the bar, not so much. Another problem that I had was telling who was my size. I had a hard time telling who was the same size as me, which isn't, you know, like, it's not like I was going out to try and find somebody smaller than me to beat them up. I would generally talk with somebody who was bigger than me, and I would talk big enough that they felt that they could hit me and shut me up. And although I have these sharp eye sockets, and I cut easily if you punch me, I don't go down very easily, and I hit hard. So I generally did really well in my fights. Um, End up scrapping with some guy who was 30, 40 pounds bigger than me because like I'm about 5'7", and when I'm at a happy weight, I'm about 140. And I was fighting with guys much, much bigger than that. You know, usually 180, 190, 6 foot. And I would see them after I fought and realize it's just, you know, it's David and Goliath sitting over here. But I was a dirty fighter. I gouge, bite, whatever I had to do to gain an advantage. So it wasn't that I was out there all Sir Galahad, you know, whooping people's asses and sticking up for the underdog. I tried to say I was sticking up for the underdog a lot, but I wasn't. I was sticking up for my own injured sense of self-importance and pride. People who are impatient rarely participate in intellectual discussions. And when they do, they don't do a good job of it. They just try to cut you off and change the subject because it's kind of a form of censorship. If they don't feel that they can participate in the discussion clearly, then they just try to shut you down. An example of one of my discussions is I was at a party at my friend's house, and I was talking to a stranger, someone I'd never met before, and I pointed out my opinion that the Japanese people, because of their isolated and xenophobic culture in the far past, and their appreciation of and study of martial arts in various forms, whether it's kendo or use of the samurai sword or karate or any of the hands-free martial arts, I've said that they may be genetically predisposed to enjoying baseball, because baseball is an incredible phenomenon in Japan, and it kind of caught everybody by surprise. That anyway, that's neither here nor there. My reasoning was based on Richard Dawkins' The Selfish Gene, in which he describes a colony of bees in which they found that a quarter of the bees would open a cell that contained an infected larva and remove it from the hive so as to get the infection out of the hive. A quarter of the population would only open the cell, and a quarter of the population would only remove the bee from the cell if someone else had opened it. The third quarter of the population ignored them and didn't do anything about them whatsoever. They're like the sleeping bees. Then I pointed out that the Japanese people, having had a closed genetic loop, I'm not saying that they're inbred, but they're a very insular nation, especially, well, right up until, I think, until an American admiral showed up and kind of forced them to do business. They were very closed society, and as such, they developed very distinct behaviors. And much like a colony of bees, they're hard workers and dedicated to one task. Anyway, the reason why I suggested that they may be genetically predisposed to enjoying baseball is due to the blocking that's involved in martial arts, which would be also included in catching a baseball. In samurai tradition, the use of a samurai sword it's roughly the same size as a bat. It can be swung much in the same way, and the principles of striking an opponent with your sword versus striking a fastball pitch are almost identical. The act of finding the correct and perfect timing and swinging with a very practiced and systematic set of muscle memories, it all kind of fires that same genetic reward system that the researchers who were studying the bees found within the bees. So after I'd explained this whole theory, and I put a whole lot more time into explaining it that day, there was a third guy hanging around the table, and he actually was a friend of mine, but he hung around, he putted around, he mixed a drink or two, he had a drink, and he stayed within earshot the whole time. And when I was done talking, he said, you made a really good point. That was extremely well put together, one of the best constructed arguments I've ever heard. He said, originally I hung around because I thought you were just going to say something racist and I was going to stop you. And that was one of my friends, right? That wasn't even just some stranger. The stranger stood there and listened to me, and he engaged, and he actually, there was no fight that night. It was just a successful sharing of an intellectual concept, and I really enjoyed it. I had, and the compliment from my friend that it was one of the best crafted arguments he had ever heard is high praise, because he's a really smart guy, and I respected his opinion a lot. Most times it didn't go that way. Many times I ended up ripping off somebody's shirt in the parking lot, getting my own t-shirt ripped, and then going home and coming up with a justification for why I had been the hero. It was kind of the aftermath and the justification process. I would go home, wake up in the morning, feel my bruises, laugh about how weak he was and how he got a few good shots in on me, but they didn't even really leave. Look at that. They didn't even leave any marks. And, minimize my bruising and my aches and pains, and laugh about how I figured he's probably all fucked up today. And that was my process. I'd also tell my friends, just exactly how much of an asshole he was being, and how lucky everyone was that I was there to straighten him out. I didn't realize how that was coming across. At the time I was very full of myself, and I thought that everybody was listening and actually really impressed with what a tough guy I was. One day, my friend Phil, after I had finished regaling everyone with what an asshole this guy was, and how I put him in his place, and maybe he'll think twice before blah blah blah. At the end of Phil's visit, he went to the door, he put on his boots, and then he turned around to me and he said, dude, I hear these stories a lot, and in every one of them, you come across as the hero. Is that really how it is? And I didn't have anything to say, which is kind of unusual. I'm pretty quick on the trigger. But I started to say something, and he said, "You don't need to say anything about it right now. Just think about it and let me know later. I gotta go." And he turned around and walked out the door. Well, I went and I sat down. I probably smoked a few joints, and I thought heavily on what Phil had said to me. Phil's a really great guy, and I hope to have him on the show one of these days, where we can just sit down and bullshit and discuss life, the universe, and everything. This is partly because of it, you know. Of all my friends, I had a lot of friends who figured that they were tough and figured that they were brave. But of all my friends, Phil was the only one who stepped up and challenged my narrative. And as such, thank you, Phil. If you ever watch this, I just want you to know exactly how much that meant to me. It was a pivotal moment in my life. Even though I didn't stop fighting right away, you know, I figure, as I look at my notes here, I figure I logged between 60 and 100 fights in 2.5 years. And I won almost all of them. You know, not to brag, not to boast. I probably didn't win them cleanly, and I probably didn't win them fairly. You know, lots of times the guy would be like, "Hey, you poked my eye, man," and I would just leave feeling like I had got the better of him. I think I used to say things like, "It's a street fight. What do you think? What do you think's gonna happen? Herb Dean's gonna come out and take a point from me?" But I no longer know how many fights I've been in. To be honest, I lost count somewhere around 30, 35, and that was very early on. So it could be 60, could be 100, could be 140. I don't know. I scrapped for a long time. I was fearless, and I was pretty much willing to fight anybody. I found out that punches don't hurt. You know, I've only ever seen a few people get stopped because a punch actually hurt them. Usually you have to knock somebody out or stun them up to the point where they're, you know, most often people would pull me back. You know, I would kind of get into the moment, start fighting, and all of a sudden they'd pull me back. Leave him alone, he's done. And I'm like, "Ah, no, he isn't. Like, he's still there. And they're like, "No, dude, he's done. He's completely, like, leave him alone." But, you know, the losses that I did have, because there were a few. There's been a few. As I get older, there's been more and more. Losses teach more than winning, you know. As long as you're winning, you tend to do the same things over and over, and you could, you know, just kind of go through the same motions. Yeah, they win. They work on most people. Then you get those odd people that they don't work on, who are able to stifle you and shut you down. And that I found that those experiences were more valuable than winning. Not that I'd rather lose than win, but as far as a learning experience, a loss is far more valuable than winning ever is. What I did learn is you need to stand up for yourself. I'm not going to say that I won't ever fight again, because that's a lie. You know, I would be willing to. I really enjoy combat sports. I enjoy fighting. I don't mind getting punched. I like giving them out. I love that moment of looking for that timing, that opening, that little shift where the hand drops or whatever, and you step in and get them, right? It's fun to me, and I don't mind paying the price of getting hit myself. But bullies don't respect the rules, and that's why I say it's important to fight, or important to stand up for yourself. You know, the rules are you're supposed to be nice and get along, but bullies aren't going to do that. Bullies don't care about the rules. They only want to put themselves forward. One night I was drinking with a friend, just drinking with him and my girlfriend. We were probably doing drugs as well, because that's the kind of place we were in at that point. And he says to me, he said, "Well, my other friend says you can hit really hard." He says, "Come on, give me one." He's a big guy. He's enormous. 260, 280 pounds, 6'6" or something, just a ginormous man. And he says, go on, here, give me one. And I was like, no, dude, I don't want to do that. Like let's not. And he's like, oh, okay. And then a couple minutes later, like, well, come on, man, just right here, give me one, come on. And I brushed it off again. No, I don't want to, buddy. Let's not do that. And then my girlfriend got up and said she had to pee. And she got up and went to the bathroom. And as soon as she was out of the room, I said to him, I was like, okay, because I knew he was going to bully me the whole night. He was going to ride me the whole night if I didn't hit him. So I said, okay, fine, get up. If you want to do this, let's do this while she's in the bathroom. I don't want her around to watch this. He's like, okay, and he hangs his chin out there. And I just threw a big, good, that's a roundhouse. He said he wanted to see how hard I could hit. Bang, I popped him right on the jaw, and he went down. Just out cold, like a light. And my girlfriend comes back from the bathroom, and there I am holding his head and checking on him to make sure he's okay. And she says, what did you do? I said, I knocked him out. She says, why? And I said, because he asked me to. But if I hadn't hit him, he would have picked on me for the rest of the night. I know it. Even though he was my friend, he had that bully mentality. And he was looking to belittle me and to put me in my place. And, show me that I was a chicken or I was too afraid to hit him. And as it was, I rung his bell really badly. I think I embarrassed him. Having confidence is kind of a form of overconfidence. If you're confident in what you can do, sometimes it leads you out beyond what you can handle. That wasn't one of those times. When I knocked him out, it was just another knockout. I've heard martial artists say that you really can't learn knockout power. You either have it or you don't. And I was fortunate enough to always have it. I think I probably learned it though. My first fight that I ever had, I hit the guy pretty good, and I never knocked him out. But I worked out on a heavy bag, and I built up that snap and that power, and eventually I was able to do a pretty good job of my fights. Don't be afraid to fight, but don't go looking for them either. I was sitting in a bar one time watching two guys on the sports screen, hockey players, hacking at each other with sticks. And I turned to the girl who was the bartender, and I said, it's almost embarrassing to see this on television. Basically all I see is two guys up there hacking at each other with sticks, throwing an adult version of a temper tantrum. And this other guy who was sitting at the corner of the bar, he says, whoa, have you ever played hockey? And I hadn't played like hockey, but I played ball hockey and I played competitive sports. So I said yes. He says, at that level? I said, no, not at that level. He says, well, let me tell you, when two guys are doing that at that level, there's a reason for it. And I looked at him and I said, man, I've been in more fights than I can count in my life. And you know what? Every single one of them was for a reason. But at the end of the day, it was just a couple of guys out in the parking lot tearing each other's shirts off, having a fucking temper tantrum. And maybe it was just the cool way that I said it, and not as in like sunglasses cool, but as in like cool casual and I don't give a fuck what you think. But he backed off. He didn't want to press the issue. And I didn't want to either. I really liked that bar, and I still like going back there if I want to have a beer and a burger. That's the place I want to go. So I wasn't looking to cause a fight, but I also wasn't going to back down like some kind of a wimp. Having a street fight is a savage act, and that's partly, kind of fits with that. The last thing I wanted to do was go out and get into some kind of a knockdown, shirt-ripping fest with a stranger again. No holds barred fights. A lot of people think that, you're supposed to fist fight with honor. And like I said, I would bite and I gouge and try and dig my thumb in between people's ribs and whatever I could in the clinch, do whatever I could to hurt them rather than to beat them. Because I know that, a guy kissed my girlfriend one time, or tried to, and I squared up with him, faced him up. I was like, "Did you just try and kiss my girlfriend?" He's like, "Well," and I just reached up and poked him in the eyes with both fingers. And he's a tough guy. He's a tough guy, and he's a scrapper. And I figured I was in for a fight, but he just like, oh, it covered his eyes. He's like, dude, you poked me in the eyes. I said, yeah, you tried to kiss my girlfriend. What's with that? He's like, oh, dude, I am so not cool with this, but oh my god, I don't want to do anything about it. And that was that. Like, if you are going to get into a street fight, there's no rules. You're not going to lose a point on the card. It's win or lose. There is no timer. Most of my fights were pretty short, between 30 seconds to a minute. But they can go long. And if they go long, they go long. They're really tiring and hard. One loss, especially in the wild, amongst animals, can have a domino effect and follow you for the rest of your life if you're afraid to lose after that. I was lucky enough that I never had that situation. I was never afraid to lose, especially after I did lose the first time. I lost against a group of guys, and there was 3 or 4 of them. I did okay against the first couple, and then the other guys got me and beat me up. But because of that, I never felt, shame that one guy bested me. And so I never felt that fear of going up against somebody else. The truth is, you should try to be peaceful with all of mankind. Just because people don't agree with you, or people try to take what you said and go tell their friends what a fucking loser you were, doesn't give you the right to go and fight them or to call them out or whatever. Maybe it does if you're wanting to live on that low level of existence and engage at that place in society, but it doesn't lift you up, it doesn't elevate you, and it doesn't make you cool. I quit because my friend challenged me. He challenged my narrative, and he challenged the way that I was behaving. Doesn't mean that I won't ever fight again, because if I do see somebody legitimately messing with somebody, like at a party one time, I invited a couple guys in off the street. We were having a fire out in my yard. A couple guys walking past and said, "Hey, you guys want to come in and party? Have a drink, whatever." Gave them some beer. They had a couple beer, and then one of them was talking to one of my other friends, and he said something along the lines of, "Oh, my friend asked him if he wanted to box, because we had boxing gloves, and we used to box, in the yard. People would, have some, brief little boxing matches, friendly matches." And I think one of the guys was like, "Hey, do you want to box?" Just in a friendly fashion. And this new guy didn't understand, and he says, "Well, you want to talk fighting?" He said, "I'll go back to my gun. I'll go back to my house and get my gun and come back here and shoot all of you." And I was walking past, I heard that. I said, "What?" I just reached over and I grabbed him by the face and I dragged him over the fence and I held him there and I yelled in his face. I said, "Where's your gun now? Because now's when you need it." And him and his friend left, and they came back with some sticks to try and fight me. And they never had any gun. It was just all big talk. But I didn't feel bad about that, because it was my house, for one thing. I had invited them in. And I felt like I was actually sticking up for, I think the guy was actually my little brother-in-law at the time. So, like the guy I was sticking up for. So I will stick up for somebody. I will fight again if it's necessary. But I really try to bring that necessity down to a minimum, because it's not a great way to live your life. Looks to me like I'm running a little bit short of my time here, so I'm just going to take a minute here, say my last little bit, which is to stand up for yourself. Don't let people push you around, but don't go looking for problems either. Always try to explain your way out of it. I've talked my way out of much less fights than I've had, but enough. And to tell you the truth, it always feels better. I guess on that short little note here, I hope everybody has an awkwardly awesome day. And remember, God loves you, and so do I.